Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and this is day 7 of Revenge Week. The finale is here and today we're doing r/BlackholeRevenge. Now I haven't seen anyone else cover this subreddit and probably for a good reason. Before I get into these stories I want to issue a warning. This is the craziest subreddit I've seen in regards to revenge stories. There are serious criminal acts and even death. So please be aware of that going in. I initially wasn't going to cover this subreddit given the content, but in the spirit of escalating Revenge Week, I thought it was only right to serve up the craziest revenge stories for you, but I also wanted to put in this warning first. So let's dive in and I'll see you at the other end. Guy bullies me for years. I get some slight revenge. This is the one time I felt proud of myself in my life. Let me set the stage. The revenge happened about 5 years ago. I came from a well-off family. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor. Well, when I was 8, my dad died in a car accident from a truck driver who ran a red light. My mum ended up having to work as a part-time escort just for a little extra cash to keep me and my sister alive. Me and my sister ended up moving schools because she got expelled for attacking a kid. She had autism and sometimes she gets mad to the point of violence. At the new school, I immediately started getting bullied for being a trap. I was tormented by this one group of kids constantly for 7 years. They mocked my sister for being autistic and said that I'm probably going to follow in my mum's footsteps of sucking D for money. Every day it was non-stop torment. In my senior year of high school, I had had enough. I enacted my revenge during the last month of school. The months prior to this, I had been studying up on their schedules, where they go after school, when they leave, when they arrive, where they live, etc. It was very stalkery, but I don't know fam. Then, after countless stalking and planning, I was ready. First off, some minuscule things. I poked simple holes all around their water bottles so when they opened them it leaked everywhere. I unscrewed their desk legs to make their desks break even from slight pressure. I did everything I could to agitate them. Then I went on to bigger things. I'd spray coyote urine on their stuff and then filled them with animal crap. I wrecked their stuff beyond comprehension. They did worse to me throughout my life and they deserved it. Now here's where it gets really, well, illegal. They all play baseball together, so I decided to hit them there. They went to baseball practice and I followed behind them. They left the locker room and I went in there and did some practice of my own. I bought a machete and went to town. Their bags were ripped to shreds. 3 of the 7 had wood baseball bats, so I destroyed those. I also set up a trap for them. When they opened their bags, an M80 would ignite. I put a metric ton of river clay in their car transmissions and set up a bed of nails in front of their tires. I wanted them to suffer. Here's where it's really illegal. I went to the main bully's house. He is an a-hole. He purposefully dislocated my shoulder for no reason once. He's the one that said the thing about following in my mum's footsteps. He's peed on me, he's assaulted me, he broke me and I was gonna get my revenge. I waited for him to leave home and broke in. I crawled into his window and started having some fun. I disassembled his bed and computer. I moved a bunch of stuff in their house around. I turned on all the lights, all the burners, the showers, sinks and everything. I busted massive holes in their walls. I made a Craigslist ad advertising free anal for a petite gay guy and put his address and phone number. I opened a bunch of gay porn and viruses onto his computer. I changed all their passwords, even their internet password. To top it all off, I followed a lesson from my idol, the PB. I went up to his room, took some laxatives and coated his room in crap and wee. I wiped myself up, crawled back out and left. I left no trace of it being me in there and I'm guessing he knew. I overheard that the utility bill was extremely high and that he couldn't sleep in his room. He started feeling at a high rate. Turns out he figured it was me, attacked me and got expelled. I don't know if I was in the right to do all of what I did, but I was proud and still am. TLDR. I got bullied for 7 years and did some illegal things in the form of revenge. Thank you for reading by the way, I know this was very long. I'm surprised the OP didn't get arrested in all honesty, and I feel bad if there was anyone else living at that house at the time, like they didn't deserve that. Cross post from Pro Revenge, Supernova Revenge and now to here. Original title, I got back at childhood bullies by destroying an entire town. Pardon for my English as it isn't my first language. I was browsing r/ask Reddit and came across a thread about whatever happened to that trenchcoat kid at your school. I was that trenchcoat kid and I came back in town and destroyed it years ago. As a background, I grew up in a conservative little town in a conservative rural area heavily dominated by religion. This makes people put great stock on moral purity and appearances. Keeping up the facade is the most important thing. Everyone must go to church weekly and people are heavily judged for appearing sinful. This was a bad thing for me as the cards were heavily stacked against me from birth. You see, I'm a baby from assault. My mother lost her parents when she was young and was taken in by her uncle and aunt. The uncle had an important position in the local religious hierarchy, so when he and a couple of his friends started sexually abusing my mum, it was ignored by everyone. When she got pregnant, it was painted as showing that she's a harlot, running around seducing married men. She was cast out. Why she didn't move out of town, I don't know. But yeah. There I became into the picture, born out of wedlock and with no father, branded as a sinful outcast. My childhood was crap. I don't go into details, but enough to say that by the time I started going to school, I was quite damaged. School made it worse. I was bullied relentlessly. Teachers were part of it, since they were all part of the religious community, which saw me as stained. Imagine being the only black kid in a town run by KKK and you get close to how it was. So yeah, in school I became that trenchcoat kid, or its local cultural equivalent. I became weird and hostile on purpose to turn people off. People were casting me into the mold of being damaged and stained. So yeah, I took it and turned it into something to protect myself with. Despite all the opposition, I managed to graduate with decent grades. A distant aunt, my only decent relative, helped me get into college in an actual city. She was the black sheep of the family and saw herself in me maybe. Around this time, my mother drank herself to death. Can't blame her for it. She had a life insurance policy that helped me study. City life liberated me. I went into therapy and managed to treat the wounds that town had sliced into me. I got rid of that crappy town, but I guess some part of it never left me. Years went by. I became a sort of analytical consultant. I work for an international company that does sort of out-of-the-box analysis for other companies. I won't go into details to protect my identity, but we assist in solving all kinds of situations. Well, in my line of work, I'm sometimes called in to help downsizing operations. This sucks. I feel for the people who get fired, but if I wouldn't do it, someone else would. A couple of years ago, I got an assignment to go into 3 different factories and assess them wholesale, then come with a suggestion of which of them to move abroad. My hometown was among those 3 factories. You see, the crappy town I grew up in was one of those one-smoke stack towns like we say in my country. There was one factory and some agriculture. Everyone worked in those jobs, like 60% of people in the factory. Rest of the economy rolled around supporting the factory and people working there. Most of the people were looking forward at nothing but a job in a factory after getting out of school. The religious community running the town ran the factory as well. The big shots in the community tended to be the bosses in the factory. This meant that the factory wasn't run that well. Promotions were based on holiness, not on merit or skill. The trip back to the hometown was glorious. Most people didn't recognise me at first. The chubby outcast had become outwards just another corporate drone. I inspected all the paperwork, listened to all their speeches and lies, audited the processes. In the process, I dropped hints and finally they got who I was. The factory people threw a party for me then for old times' sake. Many of my old school buddies were there. We remembered fake good times together. I threw shadow on every part by pulling up some certain event of bullying I had endured, just to see the atmosphere turn awkward. Then I laughed at it like it was always a joke and I had grown out of it. Inside I was seething with hatred and enjoying this all. I really loved seeing their faces, seeing what they had become, because F it, I was going to take it all away from them. In the end, they seemed relieved, believing that they were lucky it was me doing the audit, that the hometown boy would protect them. After my visit, which lasted a couple of days, was over, I cruised around the town in my rented car, just to see how the people lived and to remember what it was like. My state of mind was something close to sexual arousal. I had never understood why people pursue positions of power, but yeah, now I understood. The rest is, as they say, history. I wrote a really scathing report, documenting every little flaw and mistake ever done in the town plant. I didn't need to lie or fabricate. I simply took things that existed and polished them till they look even worse than they were. The factory was shut down and in the following 3 years, the town died. No business venture ever came to replace it. Drug use and alcohol use spiked, as did crime and domestic violence. Lives fell apart. Families fell apart. They still haven't recovered, save for a few brighter souls who moved away. I still stalk them on social media sometimes, enjoying how crappy their lives are, how they all finally got to pay for what they did to me and my mum. I don't feel a slight bit of remorse. If I could do it all again, I would. Only, I'd first make it so I could be present to watch when they received the news about the factory being shut down. Hell, in my fantasy version of events, I'd stay in town for a year just to see everyone fall apart. In reality, I will only go back there once. When my uncle finally dies, I'm gonna go and piss on his grave. Bully kid for years? Have fun falling to your death? Cross post. Posting on mobile, also just an observer, I wasn't the revengee as I would be in jail. Also, to everyone wondering where this took place in the comments, this was in New Zealand. So, a little backstory. My high school is relatively new and has a modern architectural design. Basically, there's 3 stories with a stairwell going up the middle, where you can see from the 3rd to 5th floor. Surrounding the gap there is a railing, however not that high compared to the students, as it would be acceptable for someone in primary school, elementary and not high schoolers. So the story starts a few years ago when I was 13 or 14. A guy I knew, let's just call him Sam, started to get bullied by another kid, let's call him Tom. Pretty much every lunch, Tom and his friends would hurl verbal abuse at Sam, who was relatively small, so couldn't retaliate at this point. Tom was much bigger. Don't get me wrong, they fought like once or twice initially, but Sam got his ass whipped. The bullying only increased over the years, turning from verbal abuse into physical bullying and stealing and robbing from Sam. You might think, why didn't Sam go to the administration and report Tom? Well, he did. The schools did F all. Now, as a simple observer, I'm not fully caught up in all the details of what was going on, I only know through observations I made. As I said, this has nothing to do with me. However, I do know that towards the end of high school the bullying intensified. At this point, most people sided with Sam, but couldn't do much as Tom had a massive group of guys around him whenever he bullied Sam. Now, before the incident, I spoke with Sam a few times, and he spoke about his experiences with Tom. Basically, imagine typical high school bullying, and times it by 10. It's not like Sam even deserved it, he was nice and quiet, usually keeping to himself. Pretty much Tom is a total jerk, abusing Sam whenever he can for no reason. But this wouldn't continue for too much longer. It was year 11 when the nuclear revenge happened, and by nuclear, I mean nuclear. Sam was walking along the 5th floor, minding his own business, when Tom came up and shoved him from behind. Tom then laughed and said something that I didn't quite hear at the time. However, I later learned it was about Sam's younger sister, who was in hospital with leukemia. This was the point Sam snapped. As Tom turned around and started to walk away laughing, Sam got up, ran towards Tom, picked him up with seemingly superhuman strength and threw him over the small balcony. Tom died, falling and breaking his neck and then suffocating. Sam went to juvenile, and I don't know what his sentence was, but Sam, if you ever read this and you know who you are, nice job, you're a legend at school. I wanted my father to understand I wasn't coming. Cross post. This is my first time posting, sorry for the formatting. My parents divorced when I was in the 1st grade. Not only did my dad disappear like Houdini, he stole my mother's ATM card for her personal account and drained her dry. My mother, being the saint she is, didn't even bat an eye. She still was cordial to him and never said a negative word about him. To me, my dad, albeit abandoning us, was still my hero. From 1st through 5th grade, I had the usual abandoned by dad stories. Maybe 1 or 2 visits in a year, and 50 times of me waiting by the front window with my suitcase packed to go to his house and him never showing up. My mum through all of this was supportive and never said an ill word about him, so he still stayed my hero. When I was in 6th grade, my mother finally remarried and my father, who only had a picture of me at 8 months old in his wallet, went ballistic. Did I mention he never paid child support? He would use his father's social, they had the same name, to get away with it. After my mum remarried, he let it be known that I was now my stepdad's responsibility. He cut off communication with me until I graduated high school. He didn't attend my graduation or send a card. What he did do was write me an email thanking God he no longer had to pay child support. He didn't anyway. What really broke me was his ruthless and brutal attack on my mother. Attacking her weight, looks, teeth, and blaming any perceived negative traits that I had on her. For the first time I realised what a cowardly piece of crap he was. I responded in kind. He told me that I was no child of his and that I was a waste. After that, I vowed that I would hurt him. 10 years later, my father, not interested in my wedding or my son, reached out to me. You see, he's a diabetic, and one of his organs were failing and he didn't have long. He's too far down on the list and he needed someone in our family to donate. Nuclear revenge activated. I answered his email. I met up with him and pretended that I didn't hate his guts. I went and got tested to see if I was a match. I was, did the therapy and met with doctors and his therapist. We scheduled the surgery. The day of the surgery we meet at the hospital. I smiled in his face and let him know that I wouldn't be going through with the surgery. I watched the confusion line his face. I just wanted you to know that you're no father of mine and you're a waste. I left the hospital and drive home. My mom was pretty annoyed with me that I took it that far. My father is dying and I will be attending the funeral out of spite, and I will let everyone know what a piece of crap he was. TLDR, father abandoned me and called me a waste. Later in life he needs an organ. I agree and match with him and abandon him at the hospital the day of the surgery after calling him a waste. He will die and I will ruin his funeral. Edit 1. This really blew up. For those questioning my actions, I will give further detail. My father was/is semi-obsessed with my mother. His attachment to us was only in his perceived ability to get back with my mother. In the beginning he would call and make plans to see us and just not show up. My mum would have to make up excuses. He has been married over 4 times and supports and loves his stepkids without a thought to us. Once my mother remarried, he was done with us. He kept in contact with my mother through email but had no interest in talking to his children. I have reached out to him before, to invite him to my graduation, to let him know of my marriage and that he was a grandfather. All I got back was pictures of his new wife's kiddos. Upon getting to know him and agreeing to donate, I went to one of his therapy sessions at his request. There I heard the story of the true reason he contacted me. I listened as he lamented about his impending death, how he was resigned to his fate, only to have his new wife remind him of his former kids and maybe one of them will donate, and he got excited because he had forgotten all about us, and it was like hope renewed. Do you know how crappy it is to listen to the person who is responsible for your very existence talk about forgetting your very existence? Like I was a pair of sturdy old boots that gathered dust in the back of the hall closet. Now I rediscovered I was to be warned to go and shovel crap. I knew then I wasn't going to give him anything. Thanks for the silver and gold. Edit 2. I'm not worried about a will or being left anything. He had nothing to leave. He's the male equivalent of a gold digger. He only marries women who can take care and support him as he mooches off of them. He stole thousands from my mother and she didn't press charges because she didn't want her children's father in jail. My mother was his first wife and he learned his lesson not to have kids of his own but to move into ready-made families. His ex-wives and their children have nothing nice to say about him. When I told him I wasn't going through with it, he understood exactly why. He nodded his head in understanding. I already was approached for money to contribute to the funeral, and I will. Okay, so that's all for r/BlackholeRevenge. Some rough stories in there. If you've made it this far, then thank you. I'm going to pin a comment below asking what you thought about Revenge Week, and please feel free to tell me your experience. It was a lot of fun to make these, and hopefully we can do something like it again in the future. As it's the end of Revenge Week, tomorrow we're going to do a little reflection. We're going to see if revenge is worth it, and how some people feel after they get their revenge. So, if you do enjoy these videos, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!